Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say good morning. I'd like to say sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, I'm almost in tears. I know it doesn't look like it, but thank you all for inviting me. You could have asked anyone to come and speak at your conference, but you requested that I speak, and I really appreciate that. I don't take that for granted to come before my colleagues, my peers, and I say thank you for inviting me to your conference. You guys are just treating me quite well, and I see a lot of my friends, people that I've met at different NTPI conferences. This has been wonderful for me, and by the way, this is my Cheryl Travado. I don't know if she's here this morning, but this is our 25th year of being a fellow. We graduated in 2000 from NTPI together. So in addition to being your 38th annual tax conference, it's my 25th year of being a fellow. So thank you all very much for inviting me. With saying that, let's get started. By the way, we're here to discuss, to learn, to interact regarding representation, more so before the Internal Revenue Service. And I think it bleeds over into also before the New York State tax authorities. We will focus on audit procedures. These same audit procedures will apply at the state level pretty much. A lot of things are similar. However, we want to make sure we have a good foundation when we go before the IRS. Now, I learned at a certain point, we almost have this sort of like adversarial. No, it's not adversarial. We're professionals. We're going before the IRS to represent taxpayers. So I do not see the IRS agents as my enemy. I don't. They have a job to do. Matter of fact, I love the IRS. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have a job. Okay? So I love these people. I want to work with them. I want to convince them that, because if you think about it, we both have to follow, we should, by the way, we both have to follow the same code, Internal Revenue Code, the law, the policies and procedures, things of that nature. So we come to some type of agreement as to what is and what isn't. Audits should be no different. Where they're representing the taxpayer, we want to present documentation, evidence, substantiation, explanations on behalf of our client. Sometimes we get into a situation I review my client's information, interview the client, make sure I interview them thoroughly, because how can I represent the client if I don't know much about them or the case? Make sure I do a thorough interview of the taxpayer, and now I'm prepared to go before the IRS to represent them. Now, my position is, when I'm representing a client in the audit, very, 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 very rarely will I have the client there with me. And you have to make your own judgmental decision about that. Some say, no, I'll take the client with me. I don't, because I have before. Big mistake for me, all right? Clients think that they know more than you. You get there and you're trying to make a point, and the client says, no, that's not the way it happened, all right? So I learned, for me, I don't have the client there. It works out better. Plus, clients can say something that can be harmful to the case, okay? They're very good. They have what they call foot and mouth disease. They stick their foot in their mouth very quickly. So I think with the point of representation, your job is to present the facts. We don't fabricate things. You never lie to the IRS. I make sure I have my clients understand that. I will present the facts. Now, you also are not required to volunteer information that they don't request at the same time, unless it's in your client's benefit. So this is what we want to do. Now, who will be my official timekeeper? Because sometimes I don't want to get off track. She will. That's my shipmate, former Navy. She was a corpsman. I was a storekeeper. All right. Now, storekeeper is not a bad. I never liked that title, by the way. It's almost the same as being an accountant in the Navy, a storekeeper. We kept the books. We did inventory. We did all that, made sure the unit was ready. But I never liked the name storekeeper. All right. Let's keep going. All right. Here. We're just going to read. We're going to do like we did yesterday. I know there are some things you say, okay, get past that, LG. I didn't come here for that. But let's look at all, recently we just came out of COVID. Now they're doing in-person cases, whereas during COVID they weren't. Now we see those now. They're also having what they call site visits, okay? Site visits. I just left one, a site visit. Actually, the case involved in Buffalo, but the client was in Texas where I am, it just so happens. And so I was available, And that's one thing the firm does. I hot shot to wherever the case is. If it's in California or Florida or wherever it is, they'll send me mostly for those type cases. But this one was in Texas, and it was in person. They were doing a site visit. And a lot of times, and we'll get to that, but I want to state regarding the site visits, don't be intimidated by it. And some of you don't. Some of you already know. But for any new EA, the client is not required to be there for site visits. But how many times did they tell you, okay, LG, I'll meet you and your client at your client's office, and so on and so on. And I don't argue with them anymore. When I was younger, I would say, oh, no, my client won't be. I don't say that anymore. I just show up. Then they say, where's your client? And what do I say? IDK. I don't know. They may be shopping. But the point is, they put things in a manner to where, well, you and your client were required. No, they weren't. This is a site visit. This is a true story, then we're going to move on. Had an audit in, this was another case. This was Hurricane Katrina, right after it happened. And a lot of people moved from Louisiana, actually moved to Dallas, a lot of them. This big insurance executive moved to Texas, and he was being audited. Katrina, Hurricane Katrina. And you would think that, oh, Hurricane Katrina, they won't audit these people. No, and I'm honest with you. You think you know everything, and you keep living, you don't. So I'm searching the code. There must be something in the Internal Revenue Code. If there's been some type of disaster or situation that the IRS is not supposed to audit these people, doesn't exist. Okay? Hurricane Katrina meant nothing. Matter of fact, when the auditor came in, it was a big stamp on her folder, Hurricane Katrina. Victims. So they knew it was Hurricane Katrina. Well, this was a revenue agent, by the way, not a TCO, not a tax compliance officer, which is an office audit, so it's a revenue agent. So I expect her to know everything. I expect her to know more, rather. Well, she came in, and first thing she was looking for, it was a site visit, was my client. No, ma'am, my client is not here. Well, LG, I told you, ma'am, I understand that, but my client is not required to be here. This is a site visit. And basically, I said, it's a site visit. Now you're at the site, now visit it. You know, but I wasn't trying to be funny, but it's a site visit they perform these site visits to determine if the business is functional, operational, a viable business, and it doesn't have assets. So that's fine. But my client is not required to be here for that. Why does your client need to be there for that? Matter of fact, I have my clients write all the rooms and the maps and the furniture and give it to me, so I'm prepared. But the next thing that she did, what did she do? She requested some type of information records. And I said, ma'am, you already have stamped on your folder, this is Hurricane Katrina. Yes, LG, but I need records. I already knew what to do in that type of disaster. You're allowed to reconstruct the records and the documents, but I told her, ma'am, there are no records. Hurricane Katrina, are you kidding me? Everything was underwater. So I told her, ma'am, those files are in the Gulf of Mexico. And I wasn't trying to be funny, but they actually were. Do your site visit. You're in Dallas now, but there are no records. But these are the things we'll have to deal with when we're dealing with auditors. Make sure that we're enrolled agents, most of us, maybe some CPAs and attorneys here, but for the most part, enrolled agents. And we need to make sure that we represent that designation properly. So I always approach a case professionally. Now I do. I learned not to be a little hot shot, but I approach it with respect. I want them to respect me as an enrolled agent, as a licensed professional. Present yourself that way. Don't go in all hot and arguing. And no, I allow my briefs to argue for me when I write up a case, when I respond to a case, when I write cites on the law. I allow that to speak for me, not me. Who am I? I'm just another person. LG, document your case, represent your client, and make sure you give them good, accurate information. And don't allow your client to give you any false information. Sometimes clients give you, well, give the IRS this. No, I'm not giving them that. That's not proper. That's not appropriate. That's not even your invoice. I'm giving somebody else's invoice. You got to be kidding me. No, not me. Get someone else. But here, we'll go off into, now, IRC 7602. And I'm sorry, I just see I'm getting older. Who's keeping time for me? Gotcha. My shipmate there. All right, okay. 7602, books and witnesses. This is the code section that governs Internal Revenue examinations and audits. It is also the same code section that governs the issuance of summons, which we will also discuss, all right? But authority to summons purpose may include the inquiry of an offense. It doesn't mean that your client did anything wrong, but they are allowed to inquire. Third-party contacts, which is huge. What's that letter they send for third-party contacts? That young lady raised her hand again. What's that letter number, ma'am? Why are you looking at her? 31 what? 3164. Absolutely right. Well, she's on top of her game, isn't she? But the 3164 is a third-party contact letter that's built into now not only audits but also collections. They're required to send this third-party contact letter to the taxpayer, and once they send it, they cannot make third-party contacts, or should not, unless they send this letter. Then they must wait how many days? No, come on now, you enrolled agents, come on, I'm putting you to the test here. They must wait 45 days. 45 days, and then it lasts how long after that 45-day period? They're allowed to make third-party contacts for how long? This young man raised his hand. Go ahead, sir. You're absolutely right, 1 year. I got you. Up to 1 year, but they're allowed to do that. But keep in mind, this is all part of your case administration, you being knowledgeable of what they should do, what they're required to do, and how they're to do it. Some of you never had an issue to where they made a third-party contact. I want you to be prepared for that, even though it's never happened. It has happened to me on a case. It was in South Carolina. Hughes Insurance Corporation. Vicki, you don't know about that, but this is the case we handle in the firm. Hughes Insurance Corporation, and there was a third-party contact, and of course they made the third-party contact to a previous employee that had been fired, okay? So you see what I had to deal with on that, and she didn't like the employer and so on, but they made that third-party contact to gain information on your client. Be aware of that. Here's the discriminative income function, the DIF score. The DIF score. Now, that's the system they use to score returns to select them for audit, okay? And that's why they have certain type of audits now, but the DIF score, they update that score based upon the certain type audits. Now, total positive income, we have a lot to cover, so I'm just giving you these basics. TPI is total positive income. You're wondering why this taxpayer that had a small AGI on their return. Why is the IRS wasting their time with someone that had an AGI of $8,000? Oh, you're wasting your time, IRS. IRS says, no, I'm looking at the total positive income on that return. What do you mean by TPI? They zero out all negative figures and they look at every positive figure. For example, you may have had an $8,000 net income on your Schedule C, but the TPI, the gross income, was $500,000. Okay? So they're not looking at the AGI. They're looking at the TPI. And so that's how some of these clients are being audited, by the amount of the TPI on the Schedule C's, Schedule E's, so on and so on. So don't think just because they have a small AGI that they may be excluded. Now, here's a national research program. That's what we were speaking about just a moment ago, the program that the IRS uses to update the DIF score. They have NRP audits. This year, did you know there was a such thing as a no-contact audit? Read the code. Some of your clients are being audited. There was no contact with the client. It's an internal audit. In the system that they do, they perform system-wise. It's part of the NRP program. However, I'd like to know if my client was ever audited. I'd like to know that because I may want to raise that later if the IRS attempts to audit them again, all right? That doesn't appear on the transcript when they perform a no-contact audit. You have correspondence audits. We know that those are the audits performed by not TCOs, but correspondence audits are at the service centers, okay? It's what I call the black hole audits. You know why? You can send information there 15 times, and they'll lose it 16 times, okay? Oh my gosh, but those are the correspondence audits. Some think they're easy, but they're not. Be careful of correspondence audits, because if you don't respond to a correspondence audit, and I don't know some of you have experiences, but I have. I monitored that over the years. When you don't respond timely, they should receive a what type letter? if you don't be, it should, a 30-day letter, maybe? No. Well, they shouldn't. You're on the right track frame, but they should receive a 30-day letter. You have 30 days to do what? File and appeal. Where are my appeal rights? Okay? You audited me, send me a 30-day letter. You can speak with the supervisor, or you can file an appeal. That's the purpose of a 30-day letter. 90-day letter is when we couldn't agree, audit is over. However, with correspondence audits, if you don't respond, systematically they send a 90-day letter. They're bypassing a proper procedure, 30-day letter. Be careful of that. I don't like correspondence audits. They do that systematically, but I always ask for my clients' appeal rights. We're going to discuss appeals. I don't want to rush through this. I'm getting a little excited already, and I just started, all right? Calibration audits. Those are very similar to the is it TCMP? What is it? Tax compliance, TCMP audits. Some of these, they're too young. They don't know about, she doesn't know about the TCMP audit. That's where they audited 100% of everything on the return. 100% TCMP. Testing for deviation, but they audited 100% to the penny. Those were the TCMP audits. Some of you never heard those because they don't employ those anymore, but they did exist. Calibration audits are saying, hey, they're similar to that, but we'll only audit up to 80% of that. But they audit everything, but 80%. You only need to substantiate up to 80%. TCMPs, you have to substantiate 100%. Okay, tax examiner classifiers. The IRS classifier actually identifies each issue that should be audited. Some of you think, well, the auditor determined what? No. Classifiers, they do that at the service centers. Then they pass it down, they send it out to the field, send it out to the group managers. Hey, okay, we determine what needs to be audited at the service center on this level. We send it out to the different groups around the country. This is what you will audit on this tax period. Now, the group manager passes down to the auditor, and the auditor just follow procedures, but the auditor doesn't choose what needs to be, the classifier does, all right? Should be investigated by the TCO, tax compliance officer, or the revenue agent. Tax compliance officer, as we know, is an office auditor. They're not a field agent. They audit clients in their office, and it's conducted in a manner to where they handle 2 audits per day, 4 hours each. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes it goes over 4 hours, but it's designed 2 audits per day, 4 hours each. That's a TCO. Revenue agent, totally different. They may be there for weeks in the client's office. May be there for weeks. Okay? All right. Now, planning. The IRS expects to provide improved and increased communication. It's expected. Managerial participation. Group managers are expected to be more visible. This was some time ago when they wrote this. They wrote this some time ago because how often do you ask for a group manager and they're not available? That's usually. I want to, group manager. So one of the first things I do now, I've learned, for me, I'm just not telling you what to do, but I recommend you do this. I always ask for the group manager's information. Right off the bat. Why would you do that, LG? Because if we run into an impasse, when we can't agree, I want to be able to speak to the group manager immediately. How many times have you asked for the group manager information in the middle of the audit and they refuse to give it to you? Or they don't just give it to you? I don't want to be in that position. I'm representing the taxpayer. I have a job to do. I want to be able that I perform tax protocol timely, efficiently, effectively, and ethically. I want to be able to contact the group manager. Because if we are at an impasse, we have no more, there's nothing else to discuss. Why would you continue to argue with an IRS agent about an issue that you don't agree on? We agree to disagree, right? Okay, next. Who's next? The group manager, all right? Why do you do that? Why would you want to, extend it? Because you're required under federal law, believe it or not, to exhaust all of your administrative remedies, okay? And there are some tax court practitioners here in this class, or maybe they're teaching Cheryl and Frank and Amber. Amber knows about this. If you do not exhaust your administrative remedies and you substantially prevail in a tax court case, your client is not entitled to recover their fees. They have to exhaust their administrative remedies, even though they substantially prevailed in a tax court case. So that's very important that you as an enrolled agent don't set Amber up to fail on the issue when she prevails in court and the client finds out I can't recover my fees. No, because you didn't exhaust your administrative remedies. So it's very important that you know to ask for the group manager. I always like to obtain the information first, and there are guidelines and procedures in the IRM to, number one, that the agent is supposed to, or is required to, or is informed to provide you with their manager's information. Now, it's per the IRM, not per LG, not per someone else. I read the IRM purposely. I want to know how to proceed properly. And the IRM informs that agent, it's not only for audit, but it's also for collections. Okay, it's called initial contact. Look it up in the IRM, and they're supposed to provide you with this information. All right? So therefore, now, risk analysis. Oh, additional fraud criteria has been established. What do you mean by risk? Why didn't you just say fraud? Risk analysis. That's the title. That's the title in the IRM. It's for additional issues that they're implementing in the review to look for fraud, risk analysis. So, and it's more prevalent now because of the certain issues that are developed from the ERC audits and things like that. So risk analysis is very high. We will speak about that as well. Give me one moment. I'm about to trip over. Have you noticed I was about to trip over? My shoestrings came loose. There you go. I'm good now. I'm back. I was about to trip over. I said, okay, I better stop. All right. But fraud, we'll speak about that in detail too, so we have a lot to cover. I want to keep going. Sometimes they make allegations or assertions of fraud. That doesn't mean your client has done anything fraudulent. But these are, I'm dealing with a case now. They've asserted fraud. I'm just simply saying I don't agree with it, and I'm performing all of my case reviews to confront that. By the way, even though you're not a tax court practitioner, you keep in mind you're an enrolled agent. And you must know or deal with case law, not just the code, not just treasury regulations, but as an enrolled agent, how can you defend the case? Because sometimes the cases are at the, it's judicial. You must be aware of those, because when you write your briefs, when you write your appeal, you just don't make arguments on the code, but you make arguments on case law. And this is New York, if I'm not mistaken. You guys are the Second Circuit, aren't you? Hello? You don't know what circuit you're in? Second Circuit. It's very important for you to know what circuit you're in. Short circuit, I believe that. I believe that. Texas, I'm in the Fifth Circuit, but I work in New York, so I had to be very aware of the Second Circuit. Matter of fact, I'm very aware of a lot of circuits. I think, matter of fact, Florida, someone's here from Florida, right? Raise your hand. Is that the 11th Circuit? Yeah, I think so. 11th Circuit. Maryland, 4th Circuit. California, 9th Circuit. So on and so on. Know your circuits, because why? When you make your arguments, when you write your briefs on appeals, you want to structure them for the circuit where your case lies. Why? Because the IRS, when it gets to court, they're only required to follow the rulings in their circuit. Sometimes I have to go outside my circuit, though, if there are no cases of first impression in that circuit, but you start with your circuit. Very important when you're writing your appeal. All right? Okay, here it is, employee contact information. Restructuring Act 94 requires that examiners provide the name and unique ID during personal and telephone contacts. This is the examiner, name and ID, all right? There's the IRM provision. Examiners must provide the taxpayer or their representative with their group manager's name and telephone number during the initial conversation. There's your site. Now, we do this to be prepared to represent the taxpayer. It's not about us. It's about the issues, and it's about our client. You can replace me. You can replace me as a representative. It doesn't matter. But those issues and the client remain the same. So make sure. So that's why I request. By the way, they're required to do this. So when I first contact them, send them a copy of my power of attorney. Okay? Now, usually when they send you the contact letter, that the agent's name and telephone number is normally on the contact letter. not the manager's information. So what do you do to get that? When I respond to them, sending them a copy of my power of attorney or just responding to them, thank you very much, I receive your information. By the way, I like to have your manager's name and telephone number. I put it in a fax. Why would I want to fax that? Why don't I just pick up the phone and call also? Why do we want to put it in writing? So documentation, because now becomes part of what? Which we're about to discuss also. What's very important, part of what? It becomes part of what? Starts with an A, AF, talk to me, digame, domilo, administrative file. Thank you. Yes, somebody said audit file, administrative file. Thank you. It becomes part of the file. How? See, you have to think ahead. How am I able to prove, Henry, what I stated to the agent? I asked them for the manager's name. What does the agent say? No, I never heard LG say that. But they can't refute the facts. I keep the confirmation. I keep all of that in the case file. I fax it to you. I receive my confirmation. You never responded to me. Now you're violating procedures. You don't have a choice. Well, I give it to you when I want to. No, you don't. You give it to me now. Okay? It's not proper. Now you're acting unprofessional. I approach you professionally. I like that in return. Okay? And so let's keep that in mind. But here it is. I want you to have that before we move on. We have a lot to cover. Those two things, you know who you're dealing with as the agent, but also get their manager's information. Because we may meet an impasse, or you may perform some act that violates your own procedures. Everything shuts down. Boom. You have the authority, by the way, to shut down, to stop that engagement. Stop allowing, and I'm not saying they do, because I let them do that to me before I learned, but we'll let the agents do anything they want, say anything they want, requiring, no, stop. I'll tell them, no, stop. No, we're not going any further. This stops now, and that's why you need the manager's name and telephone number. We need to meet. I need to, and sometimes the manager acts ugly. All right? Then what do you do then? Who's your boss? That happened on a case. I was representing a client in an audit in Fort Worth, Texas, and I asked for some information. So I asked for manager's information, and I asked for some information. She said, well, the case is not fully developed. I'll ask for her work papers, and we're going to discuss that too. You need a copy of your work papers. Case is winding down. Well, LG, the case is not, she was very nice. Case is not fully developed yet. I tell you what, when they're fully developed, I want a copy of those work papers. Then she got angry. Just all like, it was like a horror movie. She just switched. Then she said, well, if you want those, you have to ask my manager. Okay. All right. So I did. I went to the manager. Spoke to the manager. True story. The manager, now listen, we expect the managers to what? To perform the proper procedures, carry out the acts according to the code, to the law. That's why I'm a manager. I'll make sure everything happens properly. She didn't. She didn't like me either. She said, if you want those work papers, you have to prepare a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. By the way, we as enrolled agents know that if we want work papers, we're not required by law to prepare a FOIA. Come on, man. That's controlled by what? Internal Revenue Code section 6103, small e in parentheses. What is that called? Not everybody at once, I can't hear. Disclosure. The IRS is required by federal law to provide you with the work papers and documents on your request under Code Section 6103E. Disclosure is federal law. I'm not required to prepare a FOIA for that. I just make a request under disclosure. However, that's what she stated. I said, okay, all right. Now I got to go up the food chain. I had to keep going. So I went to the territory manager. By the way, they have a new name for them now. They're no longer territory managers, right? What are they called? Field compliance managers.
Oh, okay. I thought they called furloughed.
No, they're not. They're furloughed, but they're called field compliance managers now. Just so you'll know, they're changing the names of certain divisions and things like that, but they're no longer territory managers, they're field compliance managers. But then it was the territory manager. I went to the territory manager. I can't remember exactly what happened, but on this particular case, the first case I had to do this, I had to go all the way up to the area director. Area director. Territory manager didn't do the right thing. So I'm telling you this because sometimes you may encounter that. But you first start out by performing proper tax protocol. Do not be afraid to elevate the case. I was at one time, but I had to learn what to do. Stop, LG. You're a professional. You're an enrolled agent. This is something you must do. You're required to do under your license. You're representing taxpayer. You're a professional. You have to do this. So sometimes some cases are a little difficult because of the person you're dealing with. They're very, what's the word I'm looking for? Arrogant. You got it. They're very arrogant. You know, it's not easy, but we have a responsibility. When we took that test, when we passed that test, when we took that oath to be an enrolled agent, this is something we must do. And you know what? I'm grateful. I attended NTPI. I'm grateful for that. I learned a lot. Bob McKenzie was my first NTPI teacher. I learned a lot from him. And I've tried to employ all of those tactics at the same time of being professional, because sometimes they take you out of your context. You know, you feel like saying, oh my goodness, I wish, oh no, I forgot I'm an enrolled agent. I can't do that. You know, but they kind of move you from the context. But make sure you obtain the manager's information so you can elevate the case. Sometimes it doesn't feel easy to elevate the case, I know that, but get the number up front. It makes it much more easier when you meet an impasse or when they're not doing the right thing, stop the case. All right? Now, we're going to go down this list of procedures: lack of audit procedures, the general listing, lack of overall, when you're not doing the right thing, lack of overall preparation. Always prepare for your audit. Did I skip something here? No. Okay. Oh, general listing. Do not, how many of you allow the IRS to interview your client? You're not required to. Well, we want to interview the client, LG, we want you to show up. I gave you that code section yesterday. How many wrote that code section down? You should have it. Let me see, who am I going to pick on? Oh, you're sitting up front, aren't you? IRC 7521, small c in parentheses. IRC 7521C. That gives you the authority to represent your client without your client being present. It's not about me, it's about the law. And the law says, LG, you're not required to have your client here in lieu of a summons, and they must have grounds to issue a summons. So LG, you can appear. You got to have your client there. Matter of fact, LG, the interview can be conducted with you. They're not required to conduct the interview with the taxpayer. Just want you to know that. All right, allowing the premature access to your client. Well, LG, I want to speak to your client about this. No, you speak to me about it. What do you want to know? It's my job. I'll obtain that for you. Neglecting to reconcile the taxpayer's income. Before you go to an audit, make sure that income is accurate. Neglecting to fully understand the taxpayer's business. You're there representing the client. Client's not there. IRS start asking you things about the taxpayer's business, and you know nothing or very little. Now you're giving them grounds to bypass you. You're giving them two grounds. When you didn't interview the taxpayer properly, and you don't understand the taxpayer's business, you're giving them two grounds. Number one, to bypass you. Number two, grounds to do what? What you don't want to happen, issue a summons for the taxpayer to appear. Okay? Now, representing the client, I don't normally take the client with me, right? But there are situations you want to glean to determine, should I or shouldn't I? In Florida, a huge corporation. Actually, I was representing two corporations simultaneously in Florida. And on one of the cases, I want this guy to come with me. He was in logistics. Even though I was a SK, we dealt with logistics. It was a different thing outside of the Navy, totally different logistics. And so I needed him there. His business was so complex, I needed him there. But I only needed him there for the purpose of explaining what he did and how his business operated. After that, mom's the word. You control that. The agent just doesn't keep going with questions. I tell the agent up front, I brought my client here especially to just explain how the business functions and operates. That's the only reason I have him here. Okay, client, go ahead and explain. After that, the IRS agent wants to continue to ask questions. No, stop there. No, don't answer that. You can ask me that. We can do that. But in certain instances, you may want to decide to have the client there. Make sure the client follows your guidelines. Providing the taxpayer documents in an unorganized manner, that's a no-no. I make sure the client gives them to me organized. I present them to the IRS in an organized manner. That's unprofessional to present them in a manner. Question? Yes, sir.
So in that situation, if you have the client there with the express purpose just to explain things, once they're done explaining things, could you tell them to go home?
Beautiful. I've done that before. I've done that. Once they finish explaining, you know, I told the client, don't need you anymore, you can go. Agent said, wait a minute, I have other questions. No. That's the only reason I, who have control over the client, brought them here for that purpose. Everything else you haven't said, I have done that before, one time. Then, go ahead, no, please.
So I understand that you're in your rights to do that, and that's hilarious. But does the IRS get angry at that because they're just...
Well, I think they will become a little upset. I wouldn't say angry, but they do understand that that's your right to do so. Now, if I felt as though that the client needed to remain there for some meaningful purpose, I would allow that. If I felt as though the IRS was not on a fishing expedition and had a realistic question, I would allow my client to remain there. But usually, not always, there's a fishing expedition. I'm just trying to find out if I catch a bass or a walleye or whatever, you know, I'll do it. So I don't want my clients subject to that exposure. But it's not about their feelings. It's not about your feelings. Sometimes agents do things. They have a job to do. So it's not about our feelings. It's not about their feelings. It's about how you proceed with the case. And I no longer need the client here. And that's your responsibility, is to make that decision. And one agent, he actually got visibly upset with me. Yeah, I'm sorry. I digress. He did get upset with me. And he told me the client can't leave. I said, yes, he can. And he is. And then the client was doing this, looking at me and looking at the agent. I told the client, seriously, you make up your mind. I said, it's either you go or I go. Which one would you like? Client walked out the door. Okay? So these things actually happen. I know they seem a little funny, but I've been practicing for a while. That's why I don't have any hair anymore. That's okay. I'm good with it. My wife hasn't divorced me yet. All right? But so I've been practicing for a while, but I've learned a lot. Didn't know a lot, but because of what I've learned through the years, I try to apply that. Any mistakes I made, I try to correct them, proceed correctly, follow the law. It's just a learning procedure, and I'm still learning as an enrolled agent. I think I was licensed in 93 or 94. Even forget that year, but it's been a while since I received my license, became an NTI fellow in 2000. And continuing to practice. And as I said yesterday, best decision for me in my life and career to become an enrolled agent. This is what I want to be. I am so happy. I'm so grateful. I am an enrolled agent. That's me. That's what I was built for, is to represent clients at this level, to help distressed taxpayers, to present cases. And I love what I do. So grateful that you guys asked me to come speak in here. Now, by the way, we've been neglecting the issue of privilege with your client. Discuss privilege with your client. Did you not know that you're required to protect the privileged information of the client? Keep that in mind in audits in every case, not just audit, but collection. You are required by federal law to protect the privileged information of the client. How do they know that unless you discuss it with them? Okay? Discussing potential. Don't discuss information. How can you protect it if you didn't discuss it with your client first? By the way, what is that code section regarding privilege? Don't blurt it out, Amber. I know you already know. Don't do that. Let's put Norm. Where's Norman? Where's Norm? There you go. He even raised his hand. Let's put Norm on the spot. What's that code section, Norm? You're absolutely right, Norm. IRC 7525. Now, we're bringing up these code sections because we want you, when you leave here, to read them. Once you read them yourselves, okay, now you empowered yourself. It's not based upon what somebody else said. I read it for myself, Michelle. Michelle goes to the audit. I heard LG say it, but I went and I read it for myself. I read it, I understand it, now I can employ it. Not because LG said it or anyone else. I read it, I understand it, and now I'm using it to represent my clients. So we give you these sites on these different slides so you can read it. Go behind me. Go behind any speaker. You want to make sure that what they're giving you is good, accurate information, because you want to be able to utilize this information when you leave this conference. You came here to obtain information that I can use as a professional. You want to be more available ready. Now, don't volunteer unrequested information. The IRS doesn't ask, don't volunteer. Unless it's something that is on behalf of your client, that works out for your client. Otherwise, what did Clinton say? Don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask, don't tell. They don't ask, don't you tell. All right? So stop volunteering information. All right. Now, do not unduly delay the audit. Let's clarify that. IRS agent sends you an appointment letter. LG, I want you to appear November the 1st, XYZ time, whatever time. Now, just because you say, I'm not available that day, are you unduly delaying? Absolutely not. Don't send me a letter. You may be on vacation that week. Who knows? It's okay to say, I'm not available that day. Contact them, though. I am available this date and time, not that date and time that you just arbitrarily placed in your letter. That's not unduly delay. But unduly delay is you make an appointment with the auditor, you don't show up. You call the day before. No, we don't do that, okay? So that's not unreasonable delay. Neglecting to elevate the case. We just spoke about that. You add an impasse, that's why you need the manager's number. You want to elevate the case. As far as I need to, let's put it that way. As far as I need to, elevate the case. Neglecting to perform, this is a good one, legal research. You can't go in there saying, well, I believe, or I think. That's not appropriate. When you put on that badge, EA, it involves legal elements, okay, whether you believe it or not. When you represent a client before the IRS, a lot of us think you have to be an attorney or a tax court practitioner. What are you dealing with at this level? Do you go in there and articles that you read in the news? No. Magazines? No. Code sections. And the Internal Revenue Code is what? The
Bible.
The Bible, the law. You're making arguments on the law. Perform your legal research. Be prepared to make your arguments based upon the law. I love legal research. I love it. Neglecting to recognize signs of potential criminal elements. Okay? Now, this is when you interview your client. Okay? And sometimes it's after you interview your client. I was hoodwinked. I took on the audit. CPA, very good friend of mine. Not very good, but a friend of mine. He had to handle a case in East Texas. LG, I can't. I have to be in court. Would you take this? Yes, me? Okay, yeah, I'll do it. He said, God is my witness. This is the evening before the audit. The audit was the next. Dude, didn't you know you had to be in East Texas in court before now? Okay, I'll help you out. Got the books and the records, reviewed everything, faxed the revenue agent, copied the power of attorney. Everything was great. I'll meet you. Look, you'll meet at my office, not at my client's home, not at my client's place of business. You know you have the authority to do that, okay? You will not meet here or there. You will meet at my office where the books and records are located. My name is LG Brooks. My associate, he's no longer available at the moment, but here's the updated power of attorney. It's okay, LG. I'll meet you there. Met. And this was a revenue agent, so it was a large case, so it went on for, 3 weeks. But when you first take on a case, the books, the tax return, the books, they agreed. I didn't think I had to worry. Everything matched. This is going to be easy. This guy should be in and out of here. Piece of cake, I get paid, everything looks good. Guy's there, he keeps going. So finally he asked for, it's a business bank statements, but then they request the personal bank statements. You would say, well, it's a business, but don't forget, it depends on what type business it is. They request the personal bank statements. There's a Schedule C. I want your personal bank statements too. Okay, no problem. That's where I misstepped. Now, I'm required to provide them with that information. If not, they would have issued a what? Summons. I want to cooperate. That's part of what we do. We cooperate. We communicate, cooperate. I didn't see a problem. I provide them with the bank statements, personal bank statements. Business bank statements, perfect. Master return, all the income, beautiful. Personal bank statements, he reviews them, calls me in the conference room, had a conference room down, said, LG, I may have to make a referral on this case. A referral? I'm acting like I just fell out of a tree like a squirrel or something. A referral? What do you mean by that? I should have caught the hint immediately, not just refer to his manager. He was speaking about making CI referral. At that point in time, I knew by my training at NTPI, Bob McKenzie, and others, to stop communicating with the auditor. Stop communicating with the auditor. After they make some type of referral, you stop. You provide no other information, everything stops. I even tell the client, make a referral to them to contact an attorney, all right? And then the attorney will, if they so desire, will contact me and have me sign a Covell letter, which they did, but you do the right things first. You say, at this point in time, I need to refer you to an attorney. Because at that point, it's criminal now. So everything that you discuss with the agent is up for grabs, even though some of the information you consider to be privilege, when the case turns criminal, you lose that privilege. It converts now. All right? Be careful of that. Also, don't want you to voluntarily extend the statute. Make a good determination before you voluntarily have your client extend the statute of limitations. That's a Form 872. You extend the statute. That's a closed-end statute extension. Yes?
The 872s, the ones that I've been seeing come through, almost uniformly make an attempt at extending the statute for 1 year.
Absolutely. We want more time. We feel comfortable. So I've seen some 1.5 years. That's the 872. And would you have your client extend the statute for that long of a period? Now, sometimes I've seen it happen. You have your client sign the extension. They take that case. Oh, Michelle, now I have more time. I'm taking your case, placing it on the back burner, and I'm moving on to some other case. I'll come back to your case. Thank you for the time.
And then they'll ask for a second extension.
So they have asked for second extensions. Be careful of that. By the way, if I've provided all the information, worked with my client, met with you, provided information, why should I recommend to my client that they extend the statute of limitations? We're ready. We've done our job. You need more time, IRS agent. Why should we voluntarily give you that? So no, I don't always agree to a statute extension unless it works to the benefit of my client or the case. Think about that. They need more time. We're saying, no, we're done. We don't need more time. I presented all my evidence documentation. We're good. My client doesn't want to extend the statute. Well, if you don't do that, we'll do this. Do what you have to do. You know, my senior partner in the firm, I had to learn this from him because I'm the kind of guy, I try to work with you, but Larry in the firm, he told me, LG, it gets to the point to where you have to tell the agent, do what they have to do, no matter what. Well, I'll do this, do what you have to do. I'll do this, do what you have to do. And guess what? I'm saying it now. I've learned that technique. Do what you have to do, agent, but that means I've done my job. By the way, before we go on, everybody knows what a Form 872-A is. I take that as a no. Okay, by the way, I've only executed one once in my professional lifetime. Been practicing over 40 years. That's a form that you sign to extend the statute indefinitely. Indefinitely. Read it up. Check out the IRM. Form 872-A extends the statute indefinitely. Well, I will sign that form. I've only done it once, Michelle. I'll sign that form under certain circumstances when I want to have control over the statute. What do you mean by that? You just told me it was indefinite. Yes, it is. But there's a form that contravenes this. It's a Form 872-T. And it terminates the statute 30 days after you submit the 872-T. So it's extended indefinitely until you submit an 872-T. I can say, look, I don't like the way this is going. I know I gave you more time than you needed. I'm terminating it by submitting an 872-T. However, never sign an 872. By the way, I never signed 872s anymore. Have I ever done it? Yes. But I've learned in this environment, this professional and technical environment, never sign any type of form on behalf of your client of that nature. 433As, Bs, all of that, 872s. Why? Why would you not sign an 872 with just your, even though you're allowed by federal law, why would you not sign it? Because 5 years later, what's your first name? Are you sure? This is Luke. 5 years later, the client tells Luke, by the way, Luke, they have another representative now, right? Somebody else is representing them. And so now they're before the IRS, and they say, well, and the new agent says, why is this case still open? What happened? And the client says, I don't know. And they research the letter. Somebody signed the 872. Well, the client says, I don't remember that. And then they said, well, Luke says, well, you gave me authorization. I was your representative. No, Luke, I don't remember that. I never gave you authorization to sign it on my behalf. So if I do sign one, I make sure the client's signature is there also. But in general, I don't sign 872s because the client can always say I never gave him or her authorization to do that on my behalf. I don't know why the statute is extended. Now they make a referral to OPR on you because you took an action on behalf of the client. The client says, I didn't give you authorization to do that, but your power of attorney will save you because you had authorization under the POA. So you're good, but you don't want the trouble anyway, all right? Always get the client to sign those, all right? Allowing the client to attend the exam, we spoke about that. Neglecting to request the auditor's work papers, never request them prematurely. Wait until you have what we call meat and potatoes in the work papers. They're required by federal law to provide those to you, okay? What code section? Come on, Cindy. I know you wrote it down, 6103E. There you go, all right? All right. Neglecting to control the, neglecting to accompany client via an IRS summons. We will discuss summons very briefly, all right? You are allowed to accompany the client on the summons. I summons the taxpayer, all right? You are allowed to attend that summons with the taxpayer. We'll discuss that in more detail, though, all right? Neglected to control the IRS during the site visit. This is the site visit. You're allowed to visit certain areas, but here it is. Visit the site, and let's get out of here. You're not conducting an audit here, just because you're conducting a site visit. That's why I never want the audit held at my client's office. Neglecting to defer to the audit technique guides. Wealth of information in the ATGs. The ATGs instruct the auditors of how to proceed on particular type audits, restaurants, attorneys, if you're auditing an attorney, so on and so on. Review those ATGs. Wealth of information. You're supposed to do this and do that. Allowing the IRS total access to electronic files. Yes, we're required to provide the files to them, books and records. Books and records on the code section, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 6001, correct? Am I wrong? Jane, you with me on this? Okay, 6001, all right? Neglecting the use of an audit log or work program. That's just something to keep you on pace. Did I do this? Did I do that's just an internal document, my internal work program. Did I do this? Did I do that? Did I check this? Did I submit that? Did I request this? To keep you on point, all right? Now, to properly manage an audit and prevent potential critical mistakes, 16 points. Where's Emily? Emily made sure I corrected this. LG, you have 17 points here. LG, you have 15 points. Thank you, Emily. I corrected that. So Emily worked with thoroughly interviewing the client. These are things we should do. Securing the taxpayer's books and records and relevant documents. Matter of fact, we're going to discuss that. Performing a review of the tax return, noting any questionable items. I was in an audit before, and the auditor asked me, LG, are you aware of any adjustments or anything that should be disallowed? I said, yes. And the auditor was surprised. What? You are? Yes. This particular taxpayer, and I didn't prepare their return, they took 100% of the travel and entertainment at the time. I said, yes, I'm aware of that. And she's only allowed 50%. So yes, we're disclosing that. We concede that. So it's good as a good representative to concede the items that you know should be conceded. You gain credibility with the auditor. Okay? All right. Properly organize the records. If they're not organized, make sure before you provide them to the auditor they're organized. Establishing a list of potential items to concede. I do that. I review that, all the elements. Now, maybe certain items I know that should be conceded, but when the IRS gets to a certain point, don't forget, you never want to lie. You never want to provide inaccurate, false information. I just tell the IRS, you know what? I'll speak with my client about potentially conceding that. Conducting adequate tax tests. All research we spoke about that. Scheduling an audit and establishing contact with the examiner. Don't go by the date on the letter, by the way. If it's not good for you, say that. Do not put yourself in a crunch. Well, I better appear that day, even though I have something else to do. I have another case. But they put it in the letter, so we must appear. No, you must not appear that day. Okay? You contact the agent. Not available that day. Let's see what we can mutually work out, some other arrangement. They put that letter, they put that date there because they're required to, but you're not required to adhere to that. Making a request for the manager's group manager information, we've spoken about that. Let's get to the other points. Discussing expectations and proper procedure. Listen, this is something you also discuss with the agent. You know how they interview you and tell you what they expect? You tell them what you expect. Nothing wrong with that professionally. Nothing wrong with that. Ascertain the expected timetable of the audit, 26 to 27 months, that's per the RRM, requiring the issuance of an IDR for all IRS requests. Just take a moment on that. Agent asks you for this. Agent asks you for that, Henry. Now later, you didn't provide it, and the agent says, well, I asked Henry for it. I like to get it in writing, Amber. Well, it's just a small thing, LG. I like it in writing because later somebody will forget who requested what, and if LG didn't provide the right thing. So everything that the auditor requests, have them put it in the IDR. Well, there's only one thing, LG. Put it in an IDR. Like the women say when they want to get married, put a ring on it, right? Put it in the IDR. Put it in the IDR. Then we can work with that. You don't put it in the IDR, it's not an official request. Because you may come back later and say, well, I requested something else. He gave me this, but I requested that. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just, as a best practice, copy of the IDR and the date and how you provided it, if you faxed it or if you mailed it
Yes.
or whatever, and just something that you can quickly cross-reference and say,
Absolutely.
I gave you that via whatever on such and such.
Absolutely, I love it. Cross-reference it to the IDR. This is a professional engagement. I know I keep saying that, but I love what we do. I am such a nerd about this. I am. You know, I found my niche. I found it. You know, some people want to be this, some people want to be that. That's good. I'm an enrolled agent. And I'm grateful and happy to be who I am and what I am. I know I said that once, but you all don't understand. This was my dream after I found out what I really wanted to be, and I'm still functioning as an enrolled agent. Where's Don Rosemary? And I thought that guy, so he's not an enrolled agent anymore. Yes, he is. So people like us were still around. You remember back in the NTPI days? Oh, my goodness. Great. But they're still here. We're still in the NTPI age right here. What we're doing now, training. Okay? You never get too old for this. Never get too old. All right, request a copy of the examiner's work paper. Spoke about that, knowing when to request a managerial conference. After I've had all discussions, I want to respect that agent. I want to give them their due respect. Let's discuss this. Why do you want it? Why? How do you want me to provide? All of these things I discussed with the agent. And when the agent asks belligerent, okay, that's it. We're done. Who's your boss? We're not getting anywhere. Right now we're wasting time, spinning wheels. This isn't working, sir or ma'am. Okay? Knowing when to request a man. Matter of fact, I just had to do that on a case. I told the other person, I said, look, wasn't trying to be funny, but it only took me about 3 minutes listening to this revenue agent that had about 15, 16 years experience. And I said, oh my goodness, this lady acts like she's a squirrel in a tree. You know how the squirrels just keep running around? That's what she kept doing with her. Oh, we're raising an issue, and she'd go back to some other issue, and like she's running around in a tree. And I said, that's it. That's it. We're done. I'd like to speak with your manager, okay? So with that much experience, she should have known better. Okay, look at this. Examiners are attempting to validate audit trails and the reliability of the taxpayers' records. Make sure you do your job to determine all of that. A U.S. District Court upheld the enforcement of a summons for what? Electronic records. Now, the government is allowed to request books and records, and they changed the code, electronic records. But you're not required to provide them with the span of electronic records that are outside the scope of the audit. Some of you are giving them QuickBook records that allows them to walk in and out of other tax years. Close those years off. You're auditing 2020, give them 2020 electronic records. Not towards they can back into other years or go forward. Yes?
Yeah, because a lot of the time, they're not even looking at the numbers. They're looking at the vendor list, they're looking at the customer list.
And they're going into other tax years if you provide that to them. Close that year off. IRS agent will request an administrator's password. Okay, I'll give you one. I'm changing it. I'm giving you an administrator's password, though. But I'm not giving you an administrator's password to my client's system. Not that. I'll give you an administrator. You just ask for an administrator's password. That's what I'm giving you. But I changed the administrative password, okay? Defenses to electronic QuickBooks provide the agents with the year-end. Now, this if you have a defense for not providing that. Provide them with the year-end financial statements. Provide the agents with a hard copy of the detailed general ledger. Verify that the financial statements agree and general ledger agree to the return. Determine the information is considered privileged. Don't forget, we spoke about privileged information that you are required by federal laws, not at your discretion. You're required to protect the privileged information of the client. So at the end of all of my interviews, on my interview sheets, whether it be a collection case or an audit case, the question is there any information we discussed today that you considered privileged? Privilege belongs to who? The taxpayer, the client, not yours. You're required by federal law to protect that privileged information, okay? But you're also required by federal law to ascertain if there is any privileged information. Again, Code Section 7525. You have to hear it because that's one thing you can run into a problem with OPR. Client says, let's say Jane represented, I'm picking on you, Jane. Jane represented somebody before the IRS, and the client says, well, Jane disclosed this to the IRS, and I didn't want Jane to tell the IRS that. And OPR says, well, Jane, what happened? Jane says, well, the client didn't tell me. Well, you know what the client says? You didn't ask. Make sure you ask, okay? Any privileged information? And I also learned by attending a seminar once, I thought that was a great question, it was, but another one of the attendees says, LG, there's one more question you should ask. You see, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Yes, I am an old dog, okay? But she said, there's one more question you should ask. Is there any information, is there anything that I didn't ask? You see, is there any information we discussed? No, everything. Is there anything we didn't discuss that you consider privileged? Now they get to thinking, oh, we didn't talk about that. See? So those two questions are at the end of my questionnaires now. You live and you learn, Matt. You live and you learn, and I employ those two questions at the end of my questionnaire. Okay? All right. Now, properly perform year-end QuickBooks closing to prevent them from going on to other tax years. Now, this is an old publication, 2017. They no longer employ that. But at one point in time, they would issue this on audits, and it looked something similar to this. They would inform you, organize your records in this manner. I love that because it informed the taxpayer to organize their records. It's called Publication 2017. But they no longer publish that now, which is no longer published. But they would do that provided to the client. Now the client can't say, I didn't know. All right? R-7602 authorizes the Secretary of the Treasury and Authority to issue a summons, examine records, and take testimony. Take testimony from who? Your client. However, with the power of attorney, you're allowed to step into the shoes of the taxpayer. So you interview the client, you'll be there providing testimony. That's the authority of that power of attorney. Think about it. Who else is allowed to sign the power of attorney? Not very many people are allowed. You have to be authorized. You have to be one of us, CPA, attorney, enrolled agent. Nobody else is authorized to sign those power of attorneys, all right? There is a such thing called limited representation. We'll get to that, all right? Is that all I had there? Okay. Established via congressional information, established via congressional authority, their authority to take oral testimony, the taxpayer's book and records, third-party books and records, document evidence such as loan applications. The examiner or investigator is searching for contrary or inconsistent evidence. Keep that in mind. It's an audit. Also, it's their job. Why are we upset with the IRS agent for doing their job? That's what they've been employed to do. I respect that. My job is to present the information in a manner to whereas I can do everything on behalf of my client to protect them, but if they did something that was inappropriate, I may have to disclose that if they ask. Don't forget, if they don't ask, don't tell. If they ask, be prepared to explain. But you never try to hide information from them because you're already aware they're looking for contrary or inconsistent evidence. Be aware of that. We're speaking about audits, everybody. Okay, an inquiry via summons is not limited by the potential results of the investigation. Why did you summons my client for this information? You didn't find anything. I'm not required to. I just had a suspicion. Did you not know summons can be issued just on a mere suspicion? I'm not required to have any results. The courts have stated that the IRS may investigate merely on suspicion that the law is investigated. The courts have already set the platform. All I have to do is say, well, I suspect that this guy may be doing this, Henry. So, I'm issuing a summons. Oh, I don't like it, but we have to deal with it. Even merely because it wants assurance that the law is not being violated. This is written in the court records. I just want to make sure your client is not a crook. So I'm issuing a summons. Summons is a very powerful document, okay? No internal statutory authority established regarding the enforcement of a summons. What we mean by that is when they issue a summons, it's not a tax court issue. It's not. There's no internal enforcement of that. What they do is that's a district court, all right? Now, they'll contact the district court, LG client, they didn't adhere to the summons. You have to attend what we call now a show cause hearing. Anybody ever had to appear for one of those? I couldn't be the only person in the room. Come on, Ray, don't be ashamed. So I'm the only person in the room? Oh my gosh. But I had to appear for a show cause hearing. I had to explain why, appear with the client in court, why we did provide the information. Sometimes the IRS just make a mistake on that. IRS must apply to district court for enforcement, not tax court, not CI, district court. District court will not compel enforcement if the provisions of U.S. versus Powell are not satisfied. Everybody familiar with U.S. versus Powell? I take that as a no, okay? You need to learn, read that case. That's why I gave you the case. I want you to read it. There are certain provisions, certain points on the law that before a summons is even enforceable, they had to adhere to those 4 points of law, all right? One of the items is, let's take a simple one. Let's say if the information is already in the possession of the IRS on the U.S. versus Powell, then that summons won't be enforced. But what about this one? The IRS must have performed all administrative procedures, administrative, it didn't say legal, administrative, that's how I spelled out in the court case, before the summons is enforceable. I had to use that. How did I use that? Representing the client in the audit. It was wasn't a field audit, it was a TCO, tax compliance officer, and sent my power of attorney, faxed it, did all that good stuff, verified they received it. Next thing I know, my client received a summons. I didn't know that because she didn't send me a copy of the summons, but my client called me. LG, yes. What's a summons? I said, what do you know about a summons? Right? You been doing case law research or something? No, LG, the IRS agent sent me a summons. What? Didn't send me one. Of course, I blew my top. That's why I don't have any hair anymore. That's what happened. But I called the agent. Ma'am, what's going on? Why'd you send my client a summons? I sent you my power of attorney. I did this, I did that, called your office. Well, gee, we want this, we want that. I said, but you cannot illegally bypass or informally bypass my power of attorney. You do not have that type of authority, ma'am. What are you doing? Well, my manager, okay, great. Put your boss on the phone, too. I don't care who you put. You can put president. I don't know who the president was at the time. Put them on the phone, too. William Taft. Maybe it was William Taft. You're right. You're telling on me. But I called her out on that. Now, this is a summons. Don't forget, the issuance of a summons, a taxpayer can spend up to what? 1 year in federal prison and a $1,000 fine. Not the representative, the taxpayer can spend up to a year in prison and a $1,000 fine. But I told the agent, I said, look, we're not doing this. Met with the manager. Ma'am, your agent violated one of the provisions of U.S. versus Powell, which is a Supreme Court case. They did not follow all something as simple as all. What do you mean by that, LG? She bypassed my power of attorney. She was required to contact me. Instead, ask me first for the information. Okay? She violated one of the provisions of U.S. versus Powell. They did a little research. Mr. Brooks was so sorry. We apologize. But Mr. Brooks, we were asking for this information because we're actually performing what we call a program audit. Program audits, when they're auditing one of us, they're auditing the returns of another preparer or something, and they wanted to obtain information on that preparer. I didn't prepare a return. I said, ma'am, all you had to do was ask me first. We may have cooperated and complied. But you don't do an end around me. You don't bypass my power of attorney inappropriately. That's not allowed. See, it's one thing to know the law, right? It's one thing to know it. But may come a time you may have to invoke it. Don't be afraid to do that. And I've learned to do that. So it's one thing knowing it, but invoking it, that's another. Summons may be issued must be issued for a legitimate purpose. And don't forget, my legitimate purpose is merely on suspicion. Remember the court said they can do that? That's a legitimate purpose. The summons must seek relevant information. Relevant. All right? That's something you can challenge. In the summons, information is not relevant. Or is it not? The summons should not be overly burdensome. These are some of the provisions of U.S. versus Powell. The information should not already be in the possession of the IRS. And the IRS must comply with all administrative guidelines required by the code. These are the guidelines under U.S. versus Powell. Write them down. You'll need this. Suppose the agent asked for, and we just had this happen, they were trying to establish an NOL, the basis for the NOL, and they were asking for records from 2009 forward. Are you kidding me? That's overly burdensome, all right? Try to issue a summons on that, then we'll raise that. Overly burdensome. But even something as small as administrative guidelines, they must respect your power of attorney. If you don't say anything, they'll step right over you, okay? Make sure they respond to you. Make sure you respond to them. We do not unduly delay on cases. If I need more time, contact the agent, okay? Do not disregard the agent. That's not professional, okay? Let's keep going. Request a copy of the examiner's work papers, post-exam, expectation or request a 30-day letter, you will not always receive one. We'll explain why. Preparation for timely filing of an appeal. Normally, after an audit, they issue a 30-day letter. You have 30 days to file a formal appeal, and then you file your appeal. That's not happening a lot these days. We're about to discuss that. Be aware of the provisions of the Appeals Judicial Culture Program, AJAC. Everybody familiar with AJAC? I take that as a note. Where you people been living, under a rock? Come on, come on. I'm just teasing with you, I'm just teasing. But AJAC controls now the timing of if a 30-day letter is issued or not. The provisions of AJAC changed. I think that was in 2014. It also changed the period. For example, I don't know if I have it in here, but let's discuss that now since we're discussing AJAC. AJAC is a provision where they changed the law where appeals were stating that, hey, wait a minute, and they had AJACs for collections and had an AJACs for exams. They're two different AJACs, okay? And appeals were saying, we're tired of doing the work for the examiners and for the revenue officers. We shouldn't be doing that. That's not our job. So they wrote AJACs, appeals. And I want you to look at the name. Judicial. When you're at the appellate level, you're at a more judicial level. You're not just in exams anymore. And what they tell that girl that was in the Wizard of Oz? You're not in Kansas. You're not in Kansas anymore, all right? You're at a different level, judicial level, at appeals, okay? It's pre-litigation. It's judicial, but pre-litigation. It's either tax court, a district court, a circuit court. But right now, you have to take appeals seriously. You have to buff up a little bit, okay? That's why your arguments you make during the audit are so relative. Don't say, I'll save this for appeals. No, you raise it at the lowest level that you're aware of the issue. Raise it now because the courts will look at that. Why are you just bringing this out now? Why are you doing that? That was totally improper, LG. You should have mentioned that during the audit, which I do. But AJAC changed it. So let's discuss this very quickly because I really don't know if I have it in here later. Why would you not receive a 30-day letter? Let's pick on my friend, what's his name, starts with an M, Marcos Darmilo. See? Why? Why would you not receive a 30-day letter? He's done everything he's supposed to, Amber. He attended the audit. He did this, he did that. They're concluding the audit. Marcos is expecting a 30-day letter, but he doesn't receive one. Michelle says she's going to take it up for you. Why, Michelle?
Because they forgot.
Because they forgot. No, they're not issuing a 30-day letter because of AJAC. Right, Vicki? Let's pick on my coworker that works in the CPA firm with me. Yes, it's your turn. Why? Why would they not issue a 30-day letter? What does AJAC say about that? Let me see. You're absolutely right, Vicki. Because if there's less, now this is the way it reads. I want you to be careful with this. If it's less than 365 days remaining on the statute, they're not required any longer to issue a 30-day letter. They will issue the 90-day letter. You say, wait a minute, it's after the audit. My client's entitled to an appeal. We're going to discuss that. Who's keeping time for me? Oh, how much time do I have? You are. Who's keeping time? How much time do I have? 20. Okay. AJAC now says if it's less than 365 days remaining on the statute, you do not have the opportunity to appeal. Yes. Read AJAC. They will issue a 90-day letter, and you'll only be able to now petition tax court. However, Norm, there's another provision there that they don't point out that's in the Internal Revenue Code, in the manual. It's 365 days, Vicki. However, it's technically 395 days. Why? No, you don't get the 30-day letter. Because advisory needs 30 days to review. They don't tell you that. So in AJAC, they say 365 remaining on the statute. Advisory says, I need 30 days. Read the code. Read the RM. It's 395 days, actually. Don't want you to get caught in that. So when you're calculating how much time is remaining on the statute, you're on the audit. And why do you think they drag these audits out? I'm not trying to be conspiracy theorist. I'm not. But I thought about it. Why are they dragging this audit? They're trying to get you in that realm to where they're not required to issue a 30-day letter. They want to issue the 90-day letter. It's very intimidating, unless you hire somebody like Amber. Now, I do represent clients on docketed cases. I can't represent them in court like this young lady. I'm calling her. But I represent clients on docketed cases that are docketed, and you're able to speak with, if they remand the case to appeals, or chief counsel before it goes to trial. Otherwise, I'm calling her, going to trial, I'm going to call in Amber. Okay? So my point is, though, you have a job to do all the way up until it enters the courthouse doors. Don't think you're out of it after the audit. Stop, you are not. On a docketed case, you have the authority to represent. What is that Treasury regulation? Let's ask this young man here back in the brown shirt sweater. What's that Treasury regulation? You're absolutely right. 601.501, Treasury regulation. You are authorized to represent taxpayer before all levels of the Internal Revenue Service. Read it. Go behind me. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Is this a good situation to sign that 872 to extend limitations?
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, Patricia. That was my sister's name, so I love it. She says, this is a good situation to sign the 872. By the way, Patricia, they will automatically be shoving that in front of you. Here, I'm issuing a 90-day letter, but if you want to extend it, I won't issue it if you extend the statute. I call it tax blackmail. That's what I call it. I won't do it. So it's, in my opinion, it's not a good situation just to arbitrarily sign, just to extend the statute for what? Didn't I say if we did our job, provided all information, documentation, why should we agree to extend the statute? What valid reason? No. Who needs time? Who needs time? Hello. We're good. Issue the 90-day letter. No, go be my guest. Issue the letter. Now we'll prepare for dealing with, technically, you may deal with appeals. Any case that where the taxpayer didn't have an opportunity to exercise their appeal rights, the courts will automatically remand the case to appeals once the case is docketed. So you don't have to worry about dealing with chief counsel right off the bat. If they didn't have an opportunity to exercise their appeal rights, the courts will not allow that. The courts will remand it to appeals. Appeals has jurisdiction for about how many months, Amber? You're absolutely right. 4 months. 4 months, okay? And that's why they want to work that out with you. But do you have an opportunity to represent the taxpayer in appeals? Then, if you can't prevail there, chief counsel, you're next. Bring it. Come on. Let's do this. You're allowed to represent before chief counsel. You're not in court, you're still out of court. In court, Amber. Out of court, LG. How about that? All right, let's keep going. Consider the filing of a FOIA request at that point in time. How many minutes, Amber? Emily?
15.
Good, okay. What is the effect of filing a FOIA at this point in time? Remember, I told you can just request disclosure, correct? Why would I file a FOIA? Yes, sir. I love that answer. That's one of the answers. But the other answer is you can effectively file a FOIA request to stop an audit. What do you mean by that, LG? Now you're being unethical. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Remember that audit in Florida representing their corporation? I filed a FOIA request. Why? Because they were not forthcoming with information. I've already requested this from you. You didn't do it. I made a disclosure request. You didn't do it. I tell you what, I filed a FOIA. Did it. FOIA documented the case. FOIA contacted the IRS agent in the middle of the audit. I need your work papers. You know what the auditor told FOIA? But I'm in the middle of the audit. You know what FOIA said? Disclosure said? IDC. I don't care. They filed a FOIA. You must give me these records now. You don't have a choice. You see the authority? I want you all to understand the authority that you have if you use it properly. I didn't do. I'd already asked them for information. Made a disclosure request. Don't give it to me forthcoming? Great. Then I'll do this. You have weapons, legal weapons? I do too. File it for you. Now the agent, this is a true story. God is my witness. No thunderbolts coming down, right? Then the agent came to us and asked, would you all be willing, matter of fact, Angelina worked this case with me. Would you all, LG, would you all please withdraw your FOIA request? LG, we agreed to do this and do that, and we'll even do this. And now it's a trade-off, like a horse trade. I didn't do this to make, I'd already asked you for the information. But they will recognize who you are and what you are, your authority. I filed it for you. Let's stop the audit. LG, we would be required to just stop the audit and send them a, you know what, that sounds like a me problem, a you problem, not a me problem. But LG, listen, we're willing, you know what, call the main office. I think I spoke with Larry a little, spoke with Ange about it. What do you guys think? I know I'm the lead on the case, but you know what, I always like to defer to other professionals what's going on. What do you guys think? We discussed it. So I went back to the IRS agent, and I'll tell you what, put this in writing. I know what you said with your lips. Put it in writing that you're willing to do this, 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 and that, and we'll consider withdrawing it for you to allow the audit to continue. It's up to you. And they did it. I want to show you how much authority you have. Just proceed professionally. All right, let's keep going. I don't want to run out of time.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it's important considering FOIA does not hold statute. So now, I just filed for FOIA. They say they got it July 8th, which is earlier, but I'm not going to have an answer.
Well, I agree with Don. That's another good point. Thank you, Don. FOIA does not toll the statute. It doesn't. Matter of fact, during the audit, it doesn't toll the statute. Matter of fact, when you request an appeal, doesn't toll the statute. An appeal doesn't toll the statute. Not that type of appeal, not in audit. In collections, it does. In exams, it does not. You have to know these things, all right? Issued, statutory notice of deficiency is issued pursuant to Ajax, so you will not always get a 30-day letter or allowed to be issued by appeals. Now, if appeals issues the notice of deficiency, be careful of this. This happened on another case. And Vicky said, where are you handling all these cases? Happened on another case we're handling in our inventory. The case came through. I'm sorry, you all. I don't know what's wrong with the shoestring, but give me a moment. Okay, this Final Destination type shoestring. I need to double knot. Oh, go back to my Navy days? Okay, all right. But what was I speaking about? Where was I? Inventory. The what?
The case you were going to discuss was in your inventory.
And what was it about? OMG, I'm having a senior moment.
Notice issued by appeals.
Thank you very much. I was just testing you. All right. I was just making sure he was listening. Okay, notice issued by appeals, totally different. Now, when that case is forwarded to forwarded to the courts, let's say, if the notice is issued by appeals, you still, 90-day notice, you file a tax court petition, right? Now, normally you would think, Amber, that that case will be remanded to appeals again. No, not always. So here I am, Vicky. I'm thinking, okay, contact Chief Counsel. Chief Counsel, I'm waiting on someone from appeals to contact me. I haven't received anything from appeals. And Chief Counsel says, in LG, you will not receive anything from appeals. I'm taking jurisdiction of this case. I said, okay. No appeals? She said, no, they've already exercised their appeal rights. They already had an appeal. unless the judge thinks that should be, but otherwise, you have to deal with chief counsel now, which that's what I'm doing now. That's okay, that's fine. I'll present the same elements to them, but not every case you have an opportunity for it to be remanded. Issue when less than, remember we said 395, we told you why, allows the taxpayer 90 days to file a tax court petition, United States Tax Court, all right? All right, RC 7803, huge. We need to get through this. Okay, establish independent office of appeals was already there, but they changed the name to independent office of appeals from office of appeals. Change the name, RC 7803, all right? Chief of appeals, purpose of duties. Look at this one, right of appeal. Technically, this is not a statutory right. You have a right of appeal and all, but it's not statutory, which means that the government can say, no. I need you to understand that. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right? And we'll talk about that. When there's a limitation on designated cases not eligible for referral to the Independent Office of Appeals, they can say no when the case has been designated for litigation. No appeals. You said, well, I have a right to an appeals. No. That's why I'm here today. For not only but one thing, you have a right to request an appeal during an audit. Collections, I have a right, the taxpayer has a right to an appeal, okay? During exams, they have a right to request an appeal. Big difference. By the way, what was that big case that they found out the hard way? Was that Facebook? Look it up. Facebook went to court. And you know they have a lot of money, right? Facebook, big company. Hey, we have a right to an appeal. Read that case. Oh, they didn't know. Government said, we're not giving you an appeal. Oh, they went to court. And they lost. The judge says, no, you have a right to request an appeal. You don't have a right to an appeal. We're about to drill down there. I know I only have a few more minutes. Well, by the way, IRC 7803, that's where the Taxpayer Bill of Rights has been now codified. Statutory. It's no longer a suggestion. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights are statutory now. Read our IRC 7803. I'll leave it at that, but I want you to read it when you leave here. Okay, examination policy. Appeals will attempt to settle the case based upon what? Hazards of litigation. Does the auditor think about hazards of litigation? They care less. I don't care. I don't care. I'm doing this because I don't like you, LG. They can do that. Appeals doesn't have that luxury. All right? Appeals will not raise new issues or reopen issues. This is the guidance that they have. They're not supposed to raise new issues. All right? But I'm going to warn you about something. Most new non-docketed case receipts and appeals must have at least 1 year remaining on the statute. Cases received in appeals where a petition has been filed with the United States Tax Court do not have some similar statute of limitation concerns. Don't forget, I need to talk to you about I only have a few more minutes. Where is it? New issues. All right? Right of appeal. Now, thought you had a right in appeal? Although the Taxpayer First Act appears on the surface to be somewhat perceived improvement regarding taxpayers' overall access to experience with the Independent Office of Appeals, the right of appeal continues to be administrative in nature and may be denied to certain taxpayers via IRC 7803E5. Read it. I want you to be aware of it. Certain taxpayers. And Facebook was one of those certain taxpayers. We're not giving it to you. All right? Now, here you go. Okay, access to case files, although there appears to be issue with the exact content. In any case, in conference with the Internal Revenue Service, appeals has been scheduled. A request upon the taxpayer that Chief of Appeals shall ensure that such taxpayer provided access to the non-privileged portion of the case file. That's the administrative file. Now, before any hearing or conference, they're required to give you that 10 days before the hearing. So, but I was just hired, and the hearing is in 2 days. Make your request. They're required to reschedule it now. Make sure you get that information 10. Now they have to reschedule it and push it out further to whereas they provide you that information 10 days prior to. How do I know? I've done it more than once. Okay? They're required to provide you with that information. No later than 10 days before the date of such conference. So if they need to change the date of the conference and you were just hired 2 days ago, so be it. They're required to give you that now. It is statutory, people. It is the law. Not at their discretion. Okay, in general, specified taxpayer, remember that I told you some people don't get it? In the case of a taxpayer who is a natural person, that's people, if their gross income does not exceed $400,000, but in the case of any other taxpayer corporations, receipts do not exceed $5 million, And Facebook's receipts did exceed $5 million, you would think, right? And so they are one of those specified taxpayers. Now, I may have a couple of minutes for, did I go the right way? Oh, by the way, one more thing I want to mention. Remember I told you about, what did we say here? Where is it? I just saw it. Oh, here. New issues. This is for everybody, EAs, CPAs, attorneys, tax court practitioners. Normally, appeals is not allowed to raise new issues or reopen issues. Great. So you're not allowed to raise a new issue. The danger of that is, that's appeals. What about chief counsel? Are they held to that same standard? They are not. I just had a case to where chief counsel says, I'm raising the issue. I'm included, and it was an issue of fraud. I said, wait a minute, you can't raise, wait a minute, LG, step back, review your homework, review the law, stop LG before you open your mouth, foot and mouth disease, right? I didn't do that. I stepped back and I thought about it. Oh, this is not appeals. Chief counsel can raise, thank you, a new issue, Michelle. So even though you're allowed to represent the case before chief counsel before it goes to trial, they also can raise new issues. So be very careful how you interact with them. You see the pitfalls and all the dangers we may face, but that's okay. That's what we're trained to deal with. Same as we were when we were in the military, right? When we trained, she was a corpsman, right? Medic, corpsman.
Navy has corpsman, Army has medic.
I was just testing to make sure she was in the Navy. All right, so we're trained, and that's what you are. You're trained for this. So don't be afraid. Yes, we will encounter situations that are unfamiliar. That's how we learn. We will take some hits, but that's when we step back and say, I won't do that again. Now I know better, all right? But hopefully it's enough information in this presentation to give you something to go forward with, something you can use going forward with handling audits. I think my time is up. You're all about to boot me out, so thank you all very much.